My mom handed me a folder and said, "I used your emergency fund to pay off your sister's mortgage. You'll thank me later." I just smiled and replied, "If you think so." An hour later, her phone rang and I watched her face go pale as the bank told her the transfer had been reversed. 2 minutes later, headlights pulled into the driveway. The folder was beige, the cheap kind you pick up at office supply stores in bulk. Mom slid it across her granite kitchen counter like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom. Her manicured nails, pale pink, always pale pink, drummed against the surface as she waited for me to open it. "Go ahead, Catherine," she said. "Look inside." I should have known something was wrong the moment she called me over on a Tuesday afternoon. Mom never invited me to her house in the middle of the week. Our relationship existed on a carefully maintained schedule. Sunday dinners, major holidays, and the occasional emergency that usually involved my younger sister, Brittany. Inside the folder were bank statements, my bank statements, transactions I'd never authorized, withdrawals I'd never made, transfers to accounts I didn't recognize. The emergency fund I'd spent 7 years building, gone. Every cent of the $43,000 I'd saved by working double shifts at the hospital, picking up extra weekend rotations, skipping vacations, driving my beat-up Honda until the odometer hit 200,000 MI. "I used your emergency fund to pay off your sister's mortgage," Mom announced, her voice carrying that particular tone she used when she expected gratitude. "You'll thank me later." My hands didn't shake. I'd spent too many years as an ER nurse dealing with trauma to let my body betray my emotions. I closed the folder with deliberate calm and met her eyes. "If you think so," I said, smiling. The smile clearly wasn't what she expected. Her expression flickered, confusion chasing away the self-satisfied glow she'd been wearing. "Catherine, I know you're probably in shock right now, but this was the right thing to do." Mom launched into her prepared speech. Brittany and Justin were drowning in that mortgage. The interest rate was killing them. They have 3 children to think about. You're single. You don't have dependents. And you make good money at the hospital. You can rebuild your savings. This was an investment in family. "How did you access my account?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "You gave me power of attorney when you went to that nursing conference in Seattle last year. Remember?" "You said it was just in case something happened while you were away." She waved her hand dismissively. "I'm your mother. I know what's best for this family." That conference had been 14 months ago. I'd given her limited financial power of attorney for 2 weeks, just for emergency access to pay bills if something happened to me while I was across the country. The document had expired the day after I returned. I remembered that clearly because I'd filed the termination paperwork myself. "When did you make the transfer?" I asked. "Yesterday morning." Brittany was crying on the phone the night before about possibly losing the house. I couldn't sleep knowing my baby girl was suffering. I drove to the bank first thing when they opened. Pride colored her words. I submitted the wire transfer request, and they said it would process within 1 business day. It should be hitting the mortgage company's account right about now. I glanced at the clock on her microwave. It was 2:47 p.m. I filed a fraud report with my bank during my lunch break at 11:30 a.m. as soon as I'd seen the unauthorized transaction pending in my account. They promised to act fast, given the amount involved. "Would you like some coffee?" Mom asked, already reaching for her expensive espresso machine. "We should celebrate. This is such a beautiful thing I've done for our family." "Sure," I said. "Coffee sounds great." She busied herself with the machine, talking the entire time about how Brittany and Justin could finally breathe easy, how the kids could stay in their good school district, how this was what family did for each other. I sat at the counter and listened, watching the minutes tick by. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. At 3:14 p.m., Mom's phone rang. The ringtone was something classical. She'd always thought it made her sound sophisticated. She frowned at the screen. "It's the bank," she said, probably calling about the transfer. She answered with her bright phone voice. "Hello, this is Patricia Chen speaking." I watched her face transform as she listened. The color drained from her cheeks. Her free hand gripped the counter edge. "What do you mean reversed? That's impossible." "I authorized that transfer myself this morning. I had power of attorney." Her voice climbed higher. "No, you listen to me. My daughter gave me permission to access that account. This is a family matter." The one-sided conversation continued. Mom's objections growing more frantic. Something about fraud alerts, flagged transactions, frozen accounts, and immediate reversal procedures. She hung up abruptly and stared at me. They stopped it. The bank flagged the wire transfer as unauthorized before it fully processed. They froze my access and reversed the transaction back to your account. Her eyes narrowed. What did you do? I protected my assets, I replied calmly. That power of attorney expired 13 months ago. You committed bank fraud, Mom. Wire fraud. Actually, since it crossed state lines, Brittany lives in Nevada now, doesn't she? This is ridiculous. I'm your mother. You can't file fraud charges against your own mother over helping your sister. The bank's fraud department might disagree. I took a sip of the coffee she'd made. It was good. She'd always had expensive taste. Federal law definitely disagrees. Her phone rang again. This time she didn't look at the screen before answering. What? She snapped. Then her expression changed again, cycling through confusion to horror. Brittany, slow down. I can't understand you when you're screaming. I could hear my sister's voice through the phone, high-pitched and hysterical. Mom pulled the phone away from her ear slightly, and Brittany's words became clearer. Just got a call from the bank. The wire never went through. They said it was flagged and stopped. Mom, what's happening? We were counting on this. The mortgage company is expecting payment by end of week, or they're starting foreclosure proceedings. There's been a misunderstanding, Mom said, her eyes locked on mine. I'm handling it. A misunderstanding. We already sent out messages to everyone saying the house was paid off. Justin's parents, our friends, everyone. How are we supposed to explain this? And now we owe penalty fees we didn't have before. Brittany, I'll call you back. Mom ended the call despite my sister's continued shouting. Catherine, you need to fix this right now. Call the bank and tell them it was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake, it was theft. I'm your mother, and that makes it worse, not better. I stood up. You know what the interesting thing about emergency funds is? I called them that for a reason. Mine wasn't just savings. It was my disaster plan. Car accident, medical emergency, job loss, unexpected crisis. 7 years of sacrifice for peace of mind. And you tried to steal it without asking, without permission, without even thinking to discuss it with me first. I knew you'd say no, Mom admitted. You've always been selfish with money. Ever since you were young, hoarding your allowance, refusing to share with your sister. Some things never change. Selfish? I was saving for college because you told me at 15 that you couldn't afford to send both of us, so I'd need scholarships and loans. Brittany got your support because she was the baby. I paid my own way through nursing school while living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates and eating ramen most nights. We helped you when we could. You gave me $500 my entire 4 years of college. Total. You gave Brittany your old car when she turned 16. I bought mine myself at 19, with money from working 3 part-time jobs. The words came out harder than I'd intended, but I held them in for over a decade. I'm not selfish for protecting what I earned. Headlights swept across the front windows. A car pulled into the driveway. I recognized the sound of Brittany's SUV. That's your sister? Mom said. She'll talk sense into you. Patricia Chen, the older officer asked. Yes. Mom's voice had gone small. We're here regarding a report of financial fraud and identity theft. We need to ask you some questions about accessing a bank account without authorization. Mom turned to look at me, betrayal written across her face. You called the police on your own mother. The bank's fraud department called them. I said, that's standard procedure for unauthorized transfers over $10,000. I just filed the initial report. Ma'am, may we come in? The younger officer asked. Brittany's car did arrive about 15 minutes into the questioning, and my sister burst through the front door like a tornado. She must have been nearby when Mom called, probably at the grocery store or running errands. She lived only 20 minutes away in the next town over. Catherine, what the hell is wrong with you? Those are cops. Mom was trying to help us. Mom committed a federal crime. I said I didn't ask her to do that. She's family. You don't send your mother to jail over money. The amount doesn't matter to you, does it? I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Brittany was 32, 3 years younger than me, and she'd never struggled a day in her life. Designer purse on her arm, fresh highlights in her hair, wedding ring that cost more than my car. You've never had to fight for anything. Mom and Dad smoothed every path for you. College paid for, Down payment gifted, constant bailouts whenever Justin's business ventures failed. That's not fair. I'm a nurse. I make decent money. Yes, but I work 50-hour weeks minimum. I've been physically assaulted by patients. I've held people's hands while they died. And I've come home covered in other people's blood more times than I can count. That emergency fund represented security I've never had before in my life. And Mom gave it to you like it was pocket change. We have kids, Catherine. 3 kids who need stability. Then you and Justin should have made better financial decisions. That's not my responsibility. The officers finished their initial interview and informed Mom that the bank's fraud department had filed a report and that she'd need to come to the station within the next few days for further questioning. They were professional but firm. Financial fraud was a serious charge, especially involving that amount of money. They handed her a card with a case number and told her to bring any documentation she had regarding the power of attorney. Mom started crying. Real tears this time, not the manipulative ones she'd used throughout my childhood to get her way. I can't believe you're doing this to me, your own mother, after everything I've done for you. What have you done for me, Mom? Specifically, what have you actually done? She stared at me, mouth opening and closing. Brittany jumped in. She raised you. She gave birth to you. She loved you. She fed me and put a roof over my head, which is literally the legal minimum requirement for a parent. Beyond that, I shook my head. Every significant thing in my life I achieved alone. She didn't even come to my nursing school graduation because it conflicted with Brittany's daughter's dance recital. That recital was important to me. Brittany protested, and my graduation wasn't. The laugh that escaped me held no humor. That's the problem right there. Everything in your life has always been important. Nothing in mine ever measured up. One of the officers cleared his throat. Ma'am, we need you to come down to the station within 48 hours to provide a statement. Here's the information you'll need. Mom looked at me one more time, searching for something. Mercy, maybe, or the compliant daughter who'd always been to keep peace in the family. She didn't find that person. I'll come tomorrow, she whispered. After they left, Brittany stayed. She paced around Mom's living room, her heels clicking angrily against the hardwood floors. You're really going to let them investigate her? Potentially press charges against your own mother? I filed a fraud report because she committed fraud. I said what happens next depends on what she does to make this right. She could go to prison. She could. Bank fraud carries serious penalties, though first offenses usually see lighter sentences, especially if restitution is made and the money never actually left the victim's possession. I looked up the sentencing guidelines during my lunch break right after calling the bank's fraud hotline. The fact that she's family actually makes it worse in some ways. Exploiting a relationship of trust is an aggravating factor. But the fact that the bank stopped it in time works in her favor. Brittany sank onto Mom's white couch. We're still going to lose the house. We're already 2 months behind on payments. We can't catch up. You have a degree in marketing. You could get a job. I have 3 kids. Lots of parents work. There's this thing called childcare. We can't afford childcare on top of the mortgage. Then maybe you need a smaller house. I picked up my purse. The one you have is 4,000 square feet. My apartment is 800. I manage. You're single. We have a family. Your family size was a choice you made, one you should have made with full understanding of your financial limitations. I headed for the door. I need to get going. I have a shift in the morning. Catherine. Wait. Brittany's voice cracked. Please, can't we figure something out for the kids? I paused with my hand on the door knob. Your kids aren't my responsibility. They're yours and Justin's. Here's a thought. Maybe Justin could stop investing and get rich-quick schemes and get a stable job. He's what? On his 5th revolutionary business idea in 6 years. He's an entrepreneur. He's unemployed with expensive hobbies. I softened my tone slightly. Brittany, I actually don't want to see your kids hurt, but enabling your poor decisions doesn't help them in the long run. It just teaches them that actions don't have consequences. So, you're doing this to teach us a lesson? That's sick. I'm doing this because $43,000 is the difference between me surviving a disaster and ending up homeless. That money represents every time I said no to dinners out, vacations, new clothes, upgrading my apartment, dating someone who expected me to split expensive restaurant bills. Every sacrifice I made, Mom gave to you without asking. How is that fair? Brittany didn't have an answer for that. I drove home to my small apartment on the outskirts of town, the same place I'd lived for 5 years because the rent was reasonable and it was close to the hospital. My neighbors were mostly elderly or struggling families, people who understood the value of a dollar. Inside, everything was secondhand except my mattress. I'd learned early that a good bed was worth the investment when you worked 12-hour shifts. My phone buzzed continuously throughout the evening. Brittany called 7 times. Justin called twice. Mom called from the police station sobbing, begging me to fix this. Dad called from his new wife's house in Arizona wanting to know what was happening. I answered that one. "Catherine, your mother is beside herself." He said, "Can't you work this out? She stole from me." "Dad, she was helping Brittany. Family helps family." "When was the last time anyone in this family helped me?" I asked. Genuinely, when? Silence. That's what I thought. I'm not dropping the report. You're tearing this family apart. The family was already broken. I'm just done pretending otherwise. I hung up and blocked his number. Then I blocked Brittany's. Then Justin's mom's number I left unblocked, but I didn't answer when she called. The news got around fast. By the next morning, 3 of my aunts had texted me, all with variations of the same message. How could I do this to my mother? Didn't I understand family comes first? I was being selfish and cruel. I deleted the messages without responding. At work, I threw myself into my shift. A car accident came in around noon. A teenage driver who'd been texting and a mother of 2 in the other vehicle. We saved them both. As I helped will the mom to recovery, her husband gripping her hand and crying with relief. I thought about security, about how fragile everything is, about how one bad moment can destroy everything you've built. That's why the emergency fund mattered. 3 days later, a lawyer called me. Mom had retained him to negotiate. He wanted to discuss a payment plan for restitution and my agreement not to pursue criminal charges. "How much is she offering?" I asked. "She's proposing $5,000 now in monthly installments of $500, so she'd pay back $43,000 in 76 months over 6 years. Yes." Which demonstrates her good faith, counteroffer, full restitution of $43,000 within 30 days, plus the bank's fees I incurred for fraud protection and the overdraft charges that hit my account when bills auto-drafted before the money was returned. That totals $43,773. Additionally, a written apology, an admission of wrongdoing, and she attends financial counseling for 6 months. That's extremely harsh. That's the deal. And she's lucky I'm not demanding more considering the violation of trust and the stress this has caused me. She's 62 years old and on a fixed income. Then she shouldn't have tried to commit bank fraud. I paused. Those are my terms. She has until the hearing date to accept them. Otherwise, I'll let the prosecutor handle it. The lawyer said he'd present the terms. I spent the next few days in a strange state of limbo. Work became my sanctuary, which was ironic considering most people viewed the ER as chaos. But there was order in the chaos, protocols to follow, clear objectives, measurable outcomes. Someone came in bleeding, you stopped the bleeding. Someone couldn't breathe, you helped them breathe. The problems had solutions, even if those solutions were difficult or imperfect. My personal life offered no such clarity. The messages kept coming. An uncle I hadn't spoken to in 5 years called to tell me I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. A cousin sent a lengthy text about forgiveness and Christian values, which was particularly rich coming from someone who'd stolen his own brother's identity to open credit cards. Even my grandmother, who was 93 and barely remembered what year it was, somehow got looped into the drama and left me a rambling voicemail about respecting your elders. The family narrative had solidified. I was the villain, ungrateful, vindictive, cold-hearted. The daughter who'd rather see her mother face legal consequences than show mercy. Never mind the actual crime that had been committed. Never mind my 7 years of sacrifice. The story they told themselves was simpler, cleaner. I was the bad guy, and that made everyone else innocent by default. My coworkers noticed something was wrong. I'd always been private about my personal life, but apparently my stress was showing. During a rare quiet moment at the nurse's station, my friend Denise cornered me. All right, spill, she said, sliding into the chair next to mine. You've had murder face for a week straight. What's going on? I gave her the abbreviated version. Denise listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through shock, anger, and finally, grim understanding. My sister did something similar to me, she said when I finished. Different details, same basic story. She stole my identity, opened accounts in my name, destroyed my credit. I was 25 and couldn't even rent an apartment because of her. My parents begged me not to press charges, said it would ruin her life. She had problems. She needed help, not punishment. What did you do? Press charges. She got probation and court-ordered rehab. My parents didn't speak to me for 2 years. But you know what? My credit recovered. I rebuilt my life, and my sister actually got clean because she finally faced real consequences for her actions. Denise squeezed my shoulder. Standing up for yourself isn't cruel, Catherine. Sometimes it's the kindest thing you can do, even when it doesn't feel that way. Her words helped more than she probably knew. The preliminary hearing date got set for 3 weeks out. The prosecutor's office contacted me to discuss testimony, evidence, and documentation. They had a strong case, the expired power of attorney, the bank records, Mom's own admission that she'd accessed my account. The bank's fraud detection system had stopped the transfer before it completed, which actually made the case slightly more complex. But the attempted fraud was clear. Even without completed theft, the unauthorized access alone was enough for charges. I'd given them that option deliberately. Leverage. Mom needed to understand this wasn't a negotiation between mother and daughter where guilt and obligation could sway the outcome. This was a legal matter with legal consequences, regardless of the fact that my money had been returned to my account. Dad called again from a different number, bypassing my block. I answered because I was tired and my defenses were down. Your mother is falling apart, he said. She's lost weight. She's not sleeping. The stress is aging her. Is this really what you want? What I wanted was to keep the money I earned. What I wanted was basic respect for my boundaries. What I wanted was a mother who asked before making life-altering decisions about my finances. My voice stayed steady despite the anger building in my chest. None of those things seemed important to anyone until there were legal consequences. She made a mistake. She committed attempted bank fraud. Those are different things. I pulled into my apartment parking lot and sat in the dark car. You know what I find interesting, Dad? You left Mom 8 years ago for Sharon, moved across the country, started a whole new life. Nobody calls you selfish for that. Nobody says you're tearing the family apart. But I set one boundary and suddenly I'm the worst person alive. That's not the same. It's exactly the same. You did what was right for you. I'm doing what's right for me. The only difference is I'm a woman and women are supposed to sacrifice endlessly for family. He tried to argue, but I'd already hung up. The thing nobody seemed to grasp was that I'd been sacrificing my entire life. Small sacrifices that added up. Wearing thrift store clothes in high school while Brittany got shopping trips to the mall. Working through college while Brittany joined a sorority. Skipping my own graduation ceremony because it would have meant taking time off work I couldn't afford to lose. Every birthday where Mom forgot to call but threw elaborate parties for Brittany's kids. Every holiday where I brought dishes I'd made in my tiny kitchen while Brittany showed up empty-handed and got praised just for being there. I'd swallowed all of it with a smile because that's what peacekeepers do. They absorb the damage to keep the system stable. But the emergency fund was my breaking point. That money represented more than dollars in an account. It represented freedom from the constant low-level panic of living paycheck to paycheck. It represented the ability to handle a crisis without choosing between rent and car repairs, groceries, and medical bills. It represented years of my life translated into security. And Mom had given it away like it meant nothing, like I meant nothing. The weekend before the hearing, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went through old family photos stored in a box under my bed, pictures from childhood, holidays, vacations. I looked at them with adult eyes, searching for evidence of the narrative. I'd been told that we were a happy, normal family where everyone was loved equally. What I found instead was revealing. In the photos where Brittany appeared, Mom was usually in frame too, posing, smiling, engaged. In photos where I appeared alone, Mom was often the one taking the picture, absent from the moment. There were dozens of shots of Brittany opening Christmas presents, blowing out birthday candles, graduating from high school. There were maybe 5 of me doing the same things. I found my nursing school graduation announcement still in its envelope, unsent. Mom had ordered them, insisted we needed them for family. Then she'd forgotten to mail a single one because Brittany's middle daughter had a dance competition that week, and that took priority. I told myself it didn't matter. I'd made it anyway, right? Graduated with honors, got a good job, built a life. The lack of celebration didn't negate the achievement. But it did matter. All of it mattered. The accumulated weight of being second choice, backup plan, afterthought. I'd internalized the message so completely that I'd started making myself smaller automatically, needing less, expecting nothing. That stopped now. Monday arrived. I called the prosecutor and confirmed I was still willing to testify if needed. She sounded pleased. Apparently, Mom's lawyer had been making noise about dropping the case if I pressed charges. How it would be my fault if an elderly woman went to prison. Classic manipulation. The defendant is 62 and in good health, the prosecutor noted dryly. Are they elderly by legal standards and the crime is serious? We're talking about wire fraud across state lines involving a substantial sum. Judge Bradley handles these cases regularly. She doesn't show leniency for, but we're family defenses. Good. Tuesday, Mom's lawyer called again with yet another revised offer. $30,000 now. The rest over 2 years. When I said no again, he lost his professional composure. You're being unreasonable. Your mother is willing to pay most of it back immediately. That's more than generous given the circumstances. The circumstances being that she stole from me. The circumstances being that this is your mother and you're bankrupting her over what amounts to a loan between family members. It wasn't a loan. Loans require consent. This was theft. I was getting better at staying calm during these conversations. My final offer stands. $43,873 within 30 days. Not negotiable. If she can't meet those terms, we'll see her in court. He sputtered about hardship and family bonds and Christian forgiveness. I let him talk himself out and hung up. That evening, Brittany tried a different approach. She showed up at my apartment without calling first. I almost didn't answer the door, but curiosity won out. Justin's gone, she said, pushing past me into my living room. Served me with divorce papers yesterday. His lawyer says he won't pay a dime in child support until the divorce is final, and that could take months. I have 3 kids, Catherine. 3 kids, and no money coming in until my first paycheck, which is 2 weeks away. I'm sorry you're going through that. I meant it despite everything, but it doesn't change what happened with my emergency fund. I know. I'm not here to ask you to drop the charges or give Mom the money. She sank onto my secondhand couch. I'm here because I finally looked at the mortgage documents. Really looked at them. I waited. Mom didn't pay off the whole mortgage. She only had enough to pay about 20%. The amount she tried to take from you would have barely made a dent. We'd still owe over $170,000. Brittany's laugh was brittle. She told me the house would be free and clear. She lied. We still owe the vast majority, and her interference just made the mortgage company suspicious of our finances. When the wire got flagged and stopped, they started looking harder at our payment history. The foreclosure that's happening because we're 2 months behind and they've lost faith in us. This was new information. She told me she was paying off your entire mortgage. She told everyone that. Turns out $43,000 doesn't go as far as she thought when you're dealing with a $200,000 mortgage balance. She was going to make a big payment that would have helped short term, but we'd still be drowning. Brittany met my eyes. Mom didn't help me. She'd almost made everything worse. Imagine if that payment had gone through and then we still couldn't afford the monthly bills. The mortgage company would have been even angrier. I wanted you to know that I finally get why you're so angry. After she left, I sat in the growing dark of my apartment and processed this revelation. Mom hadn't even succeeded in her stated goal. She tried to steal my money, damaged my trust, fractured our family, and it wouldn't have even solved Brittany's problem. The incompetence somehow stung worse than the malice. Mom called me herself that evening. You want me to mortgage my house, the house your father and I worked for 30 years to pay off? You wanted me to start over from nothing after I worked 7 years to build my safety net. That's different. You're young. You have time. I have student loans I'm still paying. H, my car is dying. My rent goes up every year. I have no retirement savings because every extra dollar went into that emergency fund. I'm not in a better position than you. I'm in a worse one. I'm your mother. I should be able to count on you. And I should have been able to count on my money staying in my account. I'm your mother. You're being cruel. I'm being fair. Take the deal or face the prosecutor. Your choice. She hung up on me. 2 weeks passed. The lawyer called back with acceptance of my terms. Mom would pay the $1,200, provide a written admission of wrongdoing, and attend financial counseling. In exchange, I would provide a statement to the prosecutor indicating that restitution had been made and I didn't wish to pursue criminal charges. The check arrived by certified mail along with a one-page letter. The letter was brief, clearly lawyer drafted, and admitted accessing your account without valid authorization and attempting to transfer funds without your knowledge or consent. It acknowledged that this was wrong and violated my trust. It wasn't the heartfelt apology I might have wanted, but it was an admission of wrongdoing on paper that mattered. I called the prosecutor and told her I'd reached a settlement with my mother and didn't wish to pursue criminal charges. The case could remain on file, but I wasn't pursuing prosecution. She seemed disappointed. Apparently, Mom's case would have been straightforward, but she respected my decision. Brittany sent me one final text. I hope you're happy. Mom is humiliated and broke from paying a lawyer, and the stress has her blood pressure through the roof. She's on medication now. This is your fault. I didn't respond. Christmas came. I wasn't invited to any family gatherings. I worked a double shift and had Chinese takeout alone in my apartment. It was quiet and peaceful. My emergency fund sat in my account, fully restored. I'd open a new account at a different bank entirely, one with no previous ties to my mother, and transferred everything there. Then I changed all my passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, and put a fraud alert on my credit. In February, I got an unexpected visitor at work. Brittany appeared in the ER waiting room and asked to speak with me. I met her during my break. She looked terrible, weight loss that didn't seem healthy, dark circles under her eyes. Cheap coat from Target instead of her usual designer brands. Justin left, she said without preamble. Moved in with his business partner in California. Filed for divorce last month. I'm sorry. Are you? The question held no heat. Just exhaustion. Actually, yes. You didn't deserve that. We lost the house anyway. Couldn't make the payments without Mom's bailout. Couldn't sell fast enough. It's in foreclosure, she laughed bitterly. All that drama for nothing? Where are you living? Mom's house. All 4 of us crammed into her guest rooms. She hates it, but she can't kick out her grandkids. She barely speaks to any of us, though. She's angry at everyone. Me for needing the money. You for taking it back. Dad for not getting involved, Justin for leaving, the universe for being unfair. What about work? Got a job at a marketing firm. Entry level. Terrible pay, but it's something. The kids are in public school now. Cheaper childcare situation. We're managing. She met my eyes. I wanted you to know I get it now. Not entirely, but more than before. Being broke is terrifying. Having 3 kids depending on you and not knowing if you can feed them next week. I've never felt fear like that. That's why the emergency fund mattered. Yeah, I understand that now. She stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I never thought about what you'd sacrificed because you never complained. You just quietly did what needed doing. I thought that meant it was easy for you. I was wrong. After she left, I sat in the break room and cried for the first time since this whole mess started. Not from sadness or anger, but from release. Some small part of me that had been holding on, hoping for understanding, finally let go. Spring brought changes. I got promoted to senior nurse, which came with a raise. I started dating someone I met at a hospital fundraiser, a teacher who understood working-class struggles and had his own student loans. We took walks in the park and cooked dinner at each other's apartments and split everything fairly down the middle. It felt healthy. Mom sent me a birthday card in May. Just a card. No money, no letter. She'd signed it Mom in her distinctive handwriting. I put it on my fridge. In June, Brittany invited me to her daughter's birthday party. I know we're not really talking, but Alyssa keeps asking about Aunt Catherine. No pressure if you don't want to come. I went, brought a modest present from Target. Nothing expensive. The party was at a public park. The cake was homemade, and the decorations were clearly DIY. Brittany looked freer somehow, despite the obvious financial stress. Her kids were happy running around with friends, completely unaware of adult trauma. Mom was there. We nodded at each other across the picnic tables but didn't speak. That felt right somehow. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement that we existed in the same space. As I watched Alyssa blow out her candles, surrounded by people who loved her despite their problems, I realized something important. Setting boundaries hadn't destroyed my family. It had revealed what kind of family we actually were: flawed, messy, sometimes hurtful, but also capable of survival, of change, of slowly learning to do better. My emergency funds sat safely in my new bank account, untouched and protected. I'd started contributing to it again, building it toward 50,000, then maybe 60. Security had a price, and I was willing to pay it. Because the thing about emergency funds isn't just having money for disasters. It's having the freedom to say no when people try to take pieces of you they haven't earned. It's having the power to set boundaries and mean them. It's having the security to walk away from situations that harm you, even when those situations involve family. I fought for that freedom. I'd pay for it in long shifts and missed experiences and years of careful saving. Nobody was taking it from me again. The folder Mom gave me that day still sits in my desk drawer. I kept it as a reminder, not of anger or betrayal, but of the moment I finally chose myself. The moment I decided that being a good daughter didn't mean setting myself on fire to keep others warm. It was the best decision I ever